Update. 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 Park date. Park date. If you're listening to this, well, there's no chance you will be because I'll delete it. Welcome to Park Date in Central Park, New York. You're going to love today's episode. It's a journey down memory lane across the highways and byways of a long forgotten America with an amazing guy. He's a journalist for WABC Channel 7 in New York, where we met by the Regis Philbin statue, and he also has a website, The Treachers, and his Insta is Rolando Pujol. It is, of course, Rolando Pujol, and we will be talking about all kinds of retro stuff, TV, Howard Johnson motels, and of course Pizza Huts. And if you like Park Date and you want to hear more of this kind of stuff where two old men walk around a park and reminisce, then leave us a good review and remember to subscribe to the podcast. The socials are Park Day Podcast, and mine is at Christopher Beanland. Enjoy this episode. Welcome to Central Park, and I'm here with Rolando Pujol. Rolando, thank you so much for joining me
My
today.
pleasure. Great to be here.
We've had a great little conversation on the way over from the ABC 7 studios about TV and history and all kinds of things. So we'll talk about those as we go for a little. Let's go for a little stroll around Central Park.
We're starting at a pretty good spot here.
Tavern
on the Green. I guess
at the Tavern on the Green. Yeah.
If you could expense this, we could maybe have some lunch. And
well, we're like two old men talking about the glory days of journalism.
No, I know.
Expenses. I remember those.
Remember those?
I don't think I filed an expense claim for a very, very long time.
Or if you did, you got a lot of. So, did you really need to do this?
Yeah.
What was this for? And all of that. Times change, man.
Exactly. So, Rolando, you're on staff now at ABC.
Correct.
ABC 7. But one of the things that I really, really love that you do is this thing, the Retrologist.
Correct. Yes.
I'm heading on Wednesday upstate to the Catskills.
Ooh.
And maybe that would be a good opportunity for me to check out some of the mid-century, modernism that you've been documenting.
I already have. After we finish, I'm going to send you a list of places that you should check out.
Yeah.
Just tell me where you'll be, and because I keep lists for locations to shoot, either places I've visited or places I would like to, for all 50 states, multiple countries. And principalities, and wherever I hear something, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's in the middle of, wherever, Brazil, but someday I'll go there, so make a note of it.
Exactly.
So I have a ready-made Catskills guide for you.
One of the places I'm staying is the Starlight Motel. Which
yes!
You're following.
Yes, I'm following them. They're following me. I did a piece about them shortly after they reopened and renovated and did the remarkable job that they are doing there. And they're terrific people. Yeah. Just then I reached out to them and said, look, I snuck onto your property. I took a bunch of pictures. But here's what I do. Yeah. I'm just not going to post them and say, hey, isn't this cool? Isn't this groovy? I want to know. Tell me the story. Yeah. What's the history of this place? How did you get involved in this place? What are you trying to do with this place? Because what I try to do with the Retrologist is really go to a deeper level. Yeah. Pretty pictures are nice. A little caption that says, the Starlight Motel since 19 whatever. Done, right? Easy. And then you move on with your day. But each one of these things for me is a little kind of a craft piece. Yeah. It's something that especially now that I have this audience, And I think I got the audience because I put this level of work and passion and thought into every single post. So there is no such thing as a throwaway post. I would rather not post for days than post something that's substandard. So I reached out to them. We did an email interview, put together something very, very nice. And it was great because I felt like I was on this particular beat, I was onto this story early. Because that place is just on fire. You know, it is really very, very popular. And they, are part of this broader trend of revival in the Catskills that is very refreshing to see, because when I tell people who are maybe 10 or 20 years older than me that I'm going up to the Catskills this weekend, and they're like, oh my God, how utterly depressing. Really? All those rundown resorts, and there's no life up there, and the economy is miserable. And I'm like, and for sure. And that's certainly part of the story. And there are elements of that still are there. But there is a great deal of revival, too. And people rediscovering the Catskills. I only wish that I had bought real estate up there even 5 years ago.
Could have made a fortune.
I could have made a fortune, and I'd have this lovely weekend place. Anyway, and now about a year after my profile of the Starlight, the folks behind the renovation of the Terrace Motel in nearby Ellenville, just down Route 209, reached out to me, and they kind of gave me an exclusive on their plans for that property, which had been abandoned for a while, but had good bones. Good mid-century building, a wonderful sign. And they said, would you be interested in telling our story? And I'm like, you're darn tootin' I'd be interested in telling your story. And that was back in June of 21, I want to say. And they're making progress. They're moving along, and I can't wait to get up there and see the final result. I can't wait to stay at the Starlight at some point. So I'm a little bit jealous, I got to say. Good for you, man. Come join me. I'm going to crash it. Hello. Hey, Christopher.
Exactly.
Surprise. Well, I've got coffee.
Bring a Danish. We've got to
there you
do
go. All right. I'm on it.
But I do think it's interesting. That whole history, I've never been before, so I'm really...
Oh, how wonderful.
Yeah, really interesting.
You've seen Dirty Dancing, of course.
I've seen Dirty Dancing, exactly. So I'm kind of thinking, is it going to be like Dirty Dancing? And also, is it going to be like the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel?
There's going to be a little bit of that.
Where they go to the resorts. And I was learning about the Borscht Belt.
Yes.
That history of like Jewish comedy and stuff.
Absolutely, and there's still plenty of traces of that, both extant and gone. And there's actually up in sort of the extreme northwestern fringe of the Catskills, very much closer to Binghamton than, say, the core of the Catskills. The actual resort from the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is there and can be can be visited. I think it was on the market for a while. I don't know. I think it's sold. I'm not sure. But there's even a big billboard that was featured in the show that you'll recognize.
Right.
That at least when I was up there, when I visited during a snowstorm in December of 2019, I was driving up there in the snow. I do these crazy things. It was there. I can send you some pictures from the story notes if you want.
Yeah, definitely.
So good for you. Yeah, but the Catskills are just teeming with this stuff. But my portfolio, if you will, is certainly national.
Yeah, you've gone all across the country.
All over the place. Absolutely. Yeah.
What are some of the discoveries you've made, Rolando, that have really opened your eyes, or that you've thought, wow, this is an incredible thing?
Well, for me, the transcendent moment where I think I really realized that I'm going to kind of double down on this and really, really, really make it like my avocation and perhaps one day my vocation full on, was a trip in 2013 with some buddies where we explored Route 66 from end to end, Chicago to Santa Monica. Remarkable experience, and it was not only what we saw, the architectural remnants, the old signs, the ghost towns, the natural vistas, but it was also, and perhaps more importantly, it was the people. And talking to them and becoming to understand that these places survive not by accident, Yeah, sure, an abandoned relic will, but generally what I post about are not abandoned relics, but rather places that have defied the odds, that somehow are still here. Why are they still here? What is driving them forward? And it's people who care about them, people who are passionate about them, people who have made a very serious choice in their life. I mean, they passed up potentially far more remunerative career pursuits, living in other places. They're tied to this place because it means something to them. And the fact that these places get the kind of response that they do on social media and other outlets, I mean, and books and everything, reflects how meaningful and significant they are.
Yeah,
so
exactly. And we're talking as well as motels about things like restaurants a lot, stores, kind of eccentric buildings.
All the full range of that.
Yeah.
I mean, you will find it. Certainly it was there on 66, but I am looking for that. You don't have to go on the Great American Road Trip on the mother road that is Route 66 to find this stuff.
Yeah.
Basically, what you need to, what I tell people to do who are interested, and are looking to make their own discoveries and have their own journeys, is first of all to follow me, because I will give them great advice. And I just launched a Substack newsletter, so there'll be plenty of good stuff in there as well. I can talk a little bit about that later. But I mean, to basically just open your eyes to where you are. I mean, the roots of the Richologist began, in the mid-2000s when I was writing for AM New York and Newsday. I was an editor in those publications here in the city, and I would basically write about similar places right here in Manhattan, whether it be preservation battles. I launched a series called Endangered NYC that received a very notable award. There were people coming up to me saying, why aren't the Daily News and the New York Times covering what's happening in these neighborhoods and how development is rampant, and we have to sort of stand up for mom and pop businesses. Who is advocating for the survival of the soul of New York during one of the greatest development run-ups that was, the first couple of terms of the Bloomberg administration? A very hostile time.
And that's a fascinating story in itself, isn't it? That kind of community organisation. And also, go back to Mrs. Maisel.
Yes.
I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw Jane Jacobs appear. Do you remember in that episode where they're having a meeting in Washington Square? Because I remember I've written a bit about this as well, the plans for the Lower Manhattan Expressway.
Yes, our buddy Robert Moses.
Yeah, Robert Moses wanted to basically demolish all of Little Italy.
Yes,
and
he did.
The Village and all these places.
Soho, goodbye.
Yeah, Jane Jacobs and all the locals kind of got together to protest that.
Correct.
And that kind of spirit can live on, can't it? The community says, okay, actually, we want to maybe keep these historic buildings, they mean something to us.
That's right. There is significance in this. I mean, you think about the run-up in value of the properties that Robert Moses wanted to redevelop down there. I mean, clearly there was the economic imperative was not to build the highway to facilitate faster transportation of goods and services. It was to invest in the communities, and because that's where the beauty and the history, but also for those who are speculative, and that is how New York began. It was a Dutch outpost where the main purpose was, we don't care who you are, what your skin is, color is, who you sleep with. Do you want to make money? You've come to the right place. Welcome to New Amsterdam. Have fun. Right? That DNA is still here. The smartest economic move at the time was not to demolish it, rather to invest and build in the existing buildings and streets and businesses that were there. I mean, you think about what was lost in New York in those years. I mean, the neighborhoods that were erased wholesale in the Bronx and other parts of the city. You think about even where we just met at right across the catty corner from the ABC headquarters is Lincoln Center. And that was a vibrant neighborhood at one time, dismissed as a slum, San Juan Hill, but and its ruins were forever preserved in the original West Side Story, right? And that was shot there.
Even in Central Park, Seneca Village,
correct,
was here.
That it was here.
People don't realize.
No, there's a sense people
African American residents were
absolutely there was business here. There were things here that were simply deemed unimportant, and they were subsumed to the broader goal that had been sort of advocated by William Cullen Bryant, that we need a Central Park, we need a place that we can preserve, and I certainly get the impulse, because even then in the 1840s and 50s, New York being New York, it develops, it changes every generation, and I think there was an alarm that whatever bucolic open spaces were left in New York were going to be eventually gone.
Yeah.
So, and it's quite funny. You look all around us, we're seeing all these glacial erratics.
These rocks are all fake, right?
That's right. Well, but everything else is fake.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Fake in the sense that it was very carefully planned.
Exactly.
Down to the
so
smallest tree.
It looks natural. That's the thing about a park, isn't it?
Yeah.
It looks natural, but it's actually a kind of man-made.
It was a man-made thought. They thought about it in terms of different aspects. This area will appeal to families and children. This area will appeal to right where we were near the sheep meadow.
Yeah.
There were actually once upon a time sheep there.
They should bring them back.
They should.
I think it would be great to have sheep there.
And to go back to what we were talking about earlier, do you know who got rid of the sheep?
No.
In 1934?
Was it Moses?
Yes.
It's always Robert Moses' fault.
This guy, freaking sheep. They're out,
What did Robert Moses have against the sheep?
I don't know. You'd have to ask him, but he's in a mausoleum in the Bronx, But it's probably covered, no doubt, in the Robert Caro book, The Power Broker, which has been taunting me from my bookshelf for a good 20 years.
It's a very big book.
I'm going to read it.
Yeah.
It's gonna change my life. My understanding of New York will never be more sophisticated.
Yeah.
Still haven't done it.
We could do that in the Starlight Motel. There's probably no data service there. So
there you go.
We have to read a.
There you go. That's a good place to get 1,000 plus pages. But anyway, but it's funny that the sheepfold that was there, the building that eventually became Tavern on the Green, which is of course one of the great. Iconic New York restaurants in its current iteration since 2014, but its glory days were back from the mid-70s through the early to mid-2000s under the control of Warner Leroy, descended from the great Warner Brothers dynasty and his family. That place in its day was one of those great late 20th century restaurants that you had to see to believe. The Crystal Room. I went once with my family after catching the Nutcracker at Lincoln Center. I think it was it was in 2001. And right after 9/11, everybody was horrifically, of course, traumatized, right? We fortunately lost nobody there, but it was the kind of blow that you never get over, right? And so we were on this mission to visit iconic New York restaurants and places and sort of savor them. Because we could. We were, 9/11, a bit of a digression here, but on September 25th of that year, I was going to take my parents to celebrate their 30th wedding anniversary on top of the building at the restaurant, Windows on the World.
Windows on the World.
Yeah. It did not happen, of course, But we ended up going instead to the Four Seasons, because I wanted to have this iconic New York experience.
I was literally about to talk about the Four Seasons as well, Rolando. This is the one with the Rothko. Paintings on the wall.
Tremendous. You would just walk in there. It was like the very height of mid-century corporate-facing modernism.
So there was a Mies van der Rohe building with Rothko.
That's right.
Rothko murals.
Philip Johnson design.
Philip Johnson as well. Sorry,
Oh my God! Yeah. It was like walking into some sort of rarefied temple. A remarkable experience. Nothing will ever. You'll never be able to have that Windows on the World experience. I never actually ended up going there. But 30 years later, on my parents' 50th wedding anniversary in 2021, I did take them to the new restaurant on top of One World Trade Center. So we did sort of tie that loop in a way. Not the same experience. But still something special.
Yeah, kind of a full circle.
In a way, exactly.
Experience.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. There's those iconic restaurants like the Four Seasons, but also Rolando, you tell the story of the mom and pop, like the lunchettes. Luncheonettes.
Yeah.
I was reading your piece about one of those. On the Upper East Side the other day.
Exactly. Lexington Candy Shop.
Lexington Candy Shop.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. You can get sodas and
we
floats
did.
and things.
So I've posted about that restaurant a couple of times on my Instagram, and then always looking to find ways to marry my vocation with my avocation. I did produce an ABC7 piece for the Localish franchise about that place, and we interviewed the longtime owner, and it was beyond being a brutally hot day, and the AC wasn't up to par. It was a very, very fun experience. It used to be the luncheonettes, and what a luncheonette is, for those who don't know, is basically it's a small little restaurant, but usually fairly slender, tucked into the street grid, with a long soda fountain, with stools and a lot of New York comfort food staples on the menu, and drinks like
pastrami, that kind of thing.
That kind of thing. Your basic hamburger and fries, and then some like concoctions like lime rickeys and egg creams and these kind of things that you can only.
What's an egg cream?
An egg cream does not involve. It doesn't involve egg,
right?
And it doesn't involve cream.
Yeah, that's a
but
new
it
one
does involve. It's like basically, it's like milk. Seltzer water, and then chocolate syrup,
right?
And then it's just stirred up, and it's a delightful, frothy concoction.
Oh.
Some believe that the chocolate syrup can only be, if it's a chocolate cream, has to be Fox's You Bet.
Right.
Very specific about that. You will find Fox's You Bet at your neighborhood Gristedes or local supermarket, but others feel it doesn't have to be that brand. Just it could be the syrup that we create right here at the Luncheonette.
Yeah.
But regardless, I mean, it is really one of those places, and that's so special, and it's also one that has been around so long that it's been immortalized in movies. If you've ever seen, it's one of my favorite movies set in New York. It's called 3 Days of the Condor. And it's Robert Redford, Faye Dunaway, Cliff Robertson, and there's a very important scene, kind of important scene, set in that Luncheonette with Robert Redford in it, and the place is big. You look at the images in the film and the way it looks today, no significant changes. And the gentleman that I interviewed, the owner,
he's in the movie, isn't he?
Yes,
yeah, exactly.
Yes. I think he yells like chicken plate or something like that. And there he is, which is just absolutely wild. And we conducted the interview pretty much where he was standing in the movie, which is like, how cool is that we have that kind of continuity? So luncheonettes like that in 1975, they were already disappearing. I mean, fast food was on the rise, and real estate was becoming more valuable, but there were still quite a number of them today in New York City. Generally speaking, there aren't that many left. I mean, you can count them with one or two hands. I mean, there might be some that are newer or that are embracing that concept, but in terms of the old traditional ones, I mean, you're down to just a few, and you also have to go outside of the immediate environs of New York City, at least New York City proper, to places like, for example, Hildebrandt's, which is out in Williston Park on Long Island, not far from Queens, but that is quite possibly, in my opinion, the most beautiful storefront in the country.
Right.
You've seen it on my Instagram, I think, and I posted it many times. It's almost like a go-to. Like if you need, I've hit a rut. I need a boost in engagement. I'll post Hildebrandt's again, But they went through a real crisis with there was a new landlord. There was a very, very very expensive the rent hike, and the owners who had been running it for decades were on the verge of closing until these two gentlemen came along and basically saved it.
Yeah.
And it was when that news broke. I mean, it shook not only like the preservationist / roadside America world and in social media, but I would say like anyone who values history, who values the importance of mom and pop restaurants and that sense of continuity and community that these places provide. Whether you live on Long Island or whether you live in Santa Monica, it doesn't matter. Yeah. The world is richer when these places can survive.
Absolutely. We need to have those, and it's always a pleasure to visit those places. But as well, like obviously there's. I remember reading Fast Food Nation, and I thought, oh my God, the fast food industry is actually a big problem, and it is. However, there's a kind of perverse beauty in those cookie cutter fast food places, isn't there? And I like how you kind of talk about that, Rolando, as well. Like, here's an original Pizza Hut.
Do you know? You want to tell you about that? There was a gentleman. I hope he's listening to this because I just deleted his comment and just forgot about it rather than engage. I generally ignore trolls, but don't feed the beast, as they say. This guy, this time last year, I think he'd been following me almost from the beginning. He said, "That's it, I'm out. I'm on following you. This is the second Taco Bell piece this week. I didn't follow you for this stuff. This is garbage. Have a great life, you big fat jerk. And I'm like, okay, well,
It was me.
I'm not gonna,
it was
wasn't
me,
you.
sorry.
You set this whole thing up. Now we have a dramatic confrontation. I storm off. This turns into a whole scene. This is awful. This is what a disaster.
Yeah.
But no,
this is
it
the way
was
I
you
wrote
all
it.
along.
The
You
way
had
I
this.
wrote
I
it.
knew it. I knew it. Should have known this was a trap. But I get that occasionally. But generally speaking, I would say so much of the growth on my account has come from maybe not so much the mom and pops, rather the quirky surviving examples of the early fast food restaurants in America. And if I were to say two things have really driven that, a lot of that is sort of the great boogeyman, which is of course McDonald's, which is blamed for all of society's problems, from obesity to lower wages to the destruction of mom and pop restaurants. And listen, there's truth in a lot of that, but it's not all this horrific. McDonald's isn't necessarily the great boogeyman. As a matter of fact, for many people, McDonald's has been the means by which they have been able to achieve financial success and security. I mean, we forget that so many of these fast food places that we so quickly deride as change sapping America of their soul are run by not the corporation, but by people.
Yeah,
your neighbors.
They're franchises, aren't they?
They're franchises, right? Exactly, and they're struggling just as much as they have more resources perhaps from corporate, but they're struggling just like the other guy too, who's running the luncheonette. I mean, different things. I don't want to necessarily equate the two, but it's not this, luncheonette versus McDonald's thing. I mean, at least I don't see it that way.
Yeah.
Someone might hear this and say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, but I do, and I do feel that way, and I think there has been a tendency over the past 10 years for fast food places to sort of disassociate themselves from their history, from their iconic roof lines and signage that it made them remarkable in the era where those things were valued as important marketing tools. You're driving down the highway, you see the golden arches, you see the distinctive roof on the building, the mansard, that's McDonald's. Yeah. And I know I'm going to get the same experience at this one that I got. Remember, fast food places of that era, McDonald's and Burger King and Pizza, these places emerged to fill a need. Yeah. I mean, traveling could be dicey. You weren't necessarily going to have a reliable meal. I'm not saying it's fast food is necessarily healthy. It's not, but it's what you're getting. Yeah. Right. And whereas back in the 30s and 40s on the road, you may not have. Yeah. Same reason that Holiday Inn rose, because it gave people a reliable lodging experience. But anyway, what's been happening is over the past 10 to 15 years, they've been moving away from this. You've seen this with Taco Bell. You've seen this perhaps with the greatest amount of pain for people of my generation, sort of Generation X, with McDonald's, which sort of discarded all their McDonald land characters, those fun play places. Right. Everything that made McDonald's
Hamburglar, those things.
All of this, the grimace, and the buildings that see in Europe. I've seen new McDonald's that echo the mansard roofline. Mm-hmm. There's certain element that they use more earth tones. Yeah. It's a little bit more like, I just wish what McDonald's had done is not completely scrap the 50 years of heritage, but rather find a way to evolve it and still keep the cues.
Exactly. I wonder if, Rolando, they may be seeing the value of that nostalgia, because I read that they launched an adult Happy Meal. So I think maybe they're seeing that, and
they're
also
starting to get it.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
Yeah, and you were talking about, as I was a huge Pizza Hut fan. When I was a kid, I was growing up in England in a small town, and I was obsessed by America, and Pizza Hut was the coolest thing you can imagine in the 80s.
Pizza Hut was so, McDonald's had a certain level of comfort, but they were ultimately very unpleasant seating. It was plastic seating, and harsh fluorescent lighting. Yeah. But walking into a Pizza Hut on a Friday night after winning your football game or whatever, what a remarkable experience, right?
Really cool. And so when you were talking on your feed about people who have kept these original Pizza Huts.
Fascinating.
They look like they're from Stranger Things or something. Yeah, it looks amazing.
The 70s through 90s peak of the Pizza Hut dine-in experience. And what's interesting is what Pizza Hut has done, and they've never made a big deal about this. There was never been, to my knowledge, a press release or a press push for this. But what they have done is, this is mainly in smaller towns where the original Pizza Hut buildings have survived with the red roof. Not all have red roofs, but nevertheless, the bones of the old building are still there.
Yeah.
Is that they've offered them the Pizza Hut classic concept.
Yeah.
So what they do is they retro renovate the place. Rather than going the McDonald's route, which is tearing down the old 1974 mansard and putting up a muck box, as I like to call them, or a muck Bauhaus building, which is ever so clean. Yeah, very, very, very high end what they're doing there. But they've gone back to that essential 70s Pizza Hut experience with the faux Tiffany chandeliers with a Pizza Hut logo, the checkerboard table.
I want to live there. That would be it's amazing.
The red booth, it's so cozy. So we're talking about tell me one of your big discoveries. In 2020, I was driving along Route 6, US 6, which is one of the early transcontinental roads, a very interesting one that doesn't get a lot of attention, but I was up in Pennsylvania, and I'm just driving along, and I see this Pizza Hut sign in the distance with the old 1970s logo. It says Pizza Hut Classic.
Yeah.
I'm like,
what is
what
that?
the heck is this? And if you ask any of my friends who I'm taking these road trips with, I'm always obsessed with finding like an untouched Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
Or, a Kentucky Fried Chicken that still has the 1970s bucket spinning or something like that. I can't find these things. And I'm like, what is this? I pull over. It was closed. The dining room was closed because of COVID at the time. But I peer in the window and I'm like, what's that? And I'm literally, I was alone and I'm like calling people like, what do you want? Like, it's an emergency. What is it? I found an old Pizza Hut. Like, oh Jesus Christ, you had me scared. That's an emergency. Look what it is, though. And I couldn't believe it. And then there's they each have a plaque by the door that explains the concept, what they're trying to do, which is go back to the essential experience of the dine-in restaurant. And it's written, it's quoted, it's attributed to Dan Carney, who was one of the founders of Pizza Hut. And what a great concept. And so I posted about this, and like my account blew up.
Yeah.
Like, what the people just ended? Are there more? And I knew of one more in Warren, Ohio. Yeah, that was it. And then I kept doing research and getting tips, and I found, there's a third and a fourth and a fifth. And I visited over the years several of these, and then finally, a couple of weeks ago, I decided, one thing I would always hear from people is there a master list of where these places are? I'm like, no, they're not sure, they're not talking. I guess I'm going to have to do it, know. So I spent a good bit of time doing the research, and I put together a list. I published it a couple of weeks ago. The thing went crazy. The post, people were grateful to have it, but then, this is what I was hoping would happen, people emerged from the woodwork. Oh, there's also one in this town. Oh, you missed the one in my hometown. How could you? It's like, well, thank you for telling me. Don't give me a hard time about it. I'm going to put it on the list. Yeah, of course, I would have confirmed that this was the case, either by calling the restaurant or checking on Google Maps, and sure enough, hey, look, it's been converted as of 2022, and so now the list contains well over 50 of these Pizza Hut locations, and it all began with that one that I stumbled upon on a road trip in June 2020. So I think, now I don't know how Pizza Hut's doing financially, whether this is helping, because this is part of an overall brand move to go back to nostalgic elements. Nobody out-pizzas the Hut, the return of the old logo. You see this in all their marketing, right? But it must be having some impact, because I got a snarky comment. Tell me the truth. Are you on Pizza Hut's?
Social media.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm really not. And if I were, I would certainly make that clear. Yeah. I mean, I do have some semblance of ethical journalistic standards here. I'm just a fanboy who really appreciates what Pizza Hut is doing, and so do so many people. So it clearly must be having an impact. I received an email the other day from somebody, and she just wrote back to me. I haven't read the response. But she reached out to me to get advice for her wedding. She wants to have her wedding at a Pizza Hut Classic. But the key thing is that she marry it with, so to speak, with a location where there's also like a nice resort, a hotel where her relatives can stay. And I suggested one location. I sent her my list. She looked it over, and based on what I had to read the whole email, but she found another location, I think in Arkansas. She's like, we're going to do that one.
This is amazing.
How amazing.
Rolando, the more I think about this, the more I think this is going to make a great documentary. Should we make a documentary film together? I think we should do that. We should film at the wedding, because that would be a great, that would be a great set piece.
You're onto something here, and then like commit to it, like that documentary series and those kids that you check in on every 7 years.
Exactly.
Because there will be human life that will emerge from this couple's love of pizza, which was facilitated by me. Yeah. So if I don't get an invite to this wedding, there is no justice in the world.
Absolutely. You need to get an invite.
Absolutely.
But I think here's another thing as well. That era, there was so much great architecture and great design, and when you see these corporations kind of like updating their logo, it always leaves me cold. I just think
it kills me.
You see, like they had great design. I remember when United as well did Massimo Vignelli design, which looks amazing for something that's kind of lame.
If you want to really have a trippy experience, go on YouTube and find those United commercials from the early 70s, and they will bring a tear to your eye. They're just absolutely gorgeous. But they discarded all of that, and I guess they wanted to merge with Continental. Okay, you will keep a little bit of this, but clearly that was such a boardroom marriage. Yeah. Like, do what's right for the brand. You don't have to keep the Continental globe.
Exactly.
Jesus.
And American Airlines as well. A great logo, and the new one looks so bad in comparison.
So bad. Those iconic planes with the
silver planes with the logo. It looks amazing.
Right. Lower maintenance. You don't have to play them. But I don't get when brands do that, especially in this time where there is so much. We're living in an era where nostalgia has always been a factor. It's an old Greek word, right? But it's probably never been stronger than it is right now. Certainly in my lifetime, and I'm pushing 50, and that's because we're living through really awful, wretched times, and these things give us certainly relief, but also continuity and maybe hope that things will get better.
And there's a kind of like there's a sort of warm kind of homeliness to the whole thing in a way. And when you were telling me about your journey, Rolando, across country, I've always been so interested in America. And one of my relatives, when I was a kid, gave me these 2 books which were about sites you would see off the interstate.
That's interesting.
So they had a lot of these, the very like ironic buildings, like a basket, the giant basket.
Which, by the way, I post a lot about those places. Programmatic architecture.
Exactly. The Beagle and all these kind of things that you could see, and I thought, wow, this is incredible. And actually, like, there's something kind of weirdly comforting in the weird.
Absolutely.
Right? There's something
we are just drawn to these places, right? Because they're just fun. I mean, somewhere lurking inside of us, and this is, I think, why the McDonald's changes have been so heartfelt for people is a child. I mean, somebody, and maybe not a child in the sense that children approach life with a sense of wonder and joy.
Yes, I think you're onto something.
That's
there.
What it is. And this is a bit of whimsy in an otherwise pretty horrific world that we've been born into. And we have, if we're lucky, 80 or 90 years to figure our way through it. Right. This is something that is a bright spot that takes us out of our everyday and elevates us in a way, even though it's an office building shaped like a gigantic Longaberger basket, which I visited the other day.
Have you been there? Yeah.
And it's certainly the saddest place now because the Longaberger company collapsed and somebody bought its assets, but the building's empty. It's very, very sad. Happens all the time. But I know I love visiting giant teapots and coffee kettles and coffee pots and you name it. I mean, there's just so much fun. This week, actually Wednesday, I'm flying out to Cincinnati and then driving back to New York over the weekend. And I've got a list of easily over 100 places I want to visit. And one of them is, I think it's Shippensburg, PA, where there is a gigantic paint can that has been burning a hole in my bucket list for a while, and so many other things that I want to shoot too. So there's just so much out there to see. I wonder whether the books that you had when you were a kid were by John Margolis, possibly because he was somebody who was doing this kind of documentation well before Instagram, back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Because even then, when there was so much more that he sensed that this stuff was precious, valuable, and being very quickly erased.
Yeah, exactly, being erased. And I wonder if, certain people have kind of drawn attention to it over the years. You Rolando. I think about maybe Robert Venturi and Denise Scott Brown in their book. Like, is it a duck or a decorated shed?
Which we visited too. You know,
exactly.
Yes, exactly.
There's a really good 99% Invisible.
That's right, and I think for these intellectuals like them, elevating these places and saying, no, this is actually significant. This is not merely disposable roadside kitsch, but
maybe that makes it seem more valuable, more important.
Absolutely,
and I also think about. I'm a huge Mad Men fan. And
yes,
there are
episodes
of Mad Men, aren't there, where the Draper family go and I think about there's a Howard Johnson. They're always going on about Howard Johnson's, aren't they?
I've read about this.
Howard Johnson's.
I'll send you links about this because when they had the Howard Johnson storyline, they were allegedly stopping at a Howard Johnson's up in Plattsburgh, New York. I think the Concept 65 Hojos, which was no longer there, has been repurposed. I think it's been repurposed, but they filmed it at the exterior at a Howard Johnson's that had been closed in Baldwin Park, California, which I visited, and then I brought into some of my other experiences with Howard Johnson. It's funny you mentioned Hojos, because in terms of brands and the fate of brands that really inspired me to sort of go down this rabbit hole that has now consumed my whole life, Howard Johnson's was one of those kind of those agitators, if you will. As a child, I grew up within driving easy, close distance of 2 Howard Johnsons, where my parents would alternate me and my sister's birthday parties. Right. And so Hojo's always meant something very special to me, and it was very sad to see them go gradually. Certainly the restaurant branch, which began to collapse in the 80s.
Yeah, people don't really know that brand anymore, but it was kind of, sort of hotel, restaurant.
Yeah, the hotel brand, now owned by Wyndham, is still around, and they occasionally seem to hint that they're going in some legacy direction, but they never quite do. I would love if Wyndham said, you know what, we're going to bring back Howard Johnson restaurants. But they never quite seem to do it. So when the Howard Johnsons that had survived in Times Square, which was one of the last vestiges of what I like to call Travis Bickle's Times Square, the taxi
Travis Bickle,
it was really with the neon sign and the interior that had not been updated since John Lindsay was mayor, and the place was incredible, and it closed in July of 2005. And I remember I was at Newsday at the time, and I was like, this is a big story, we got to cover it. And so we covered it. And I even sent an ex of mine at the time to go to the auction for its contents. I was at work that day, I couldn't make it. And one of the things I yielded from that experience was a massive orange sign that says cocktails.
Right.
That had been
in your house.
It's in my house.
That's fantastic.
Every morning as I have my coffee, I think about making it an Irish coffee.
Yeah, every morning you have your cocktail.
Cocktails. It's cocktail time at Howard Johnson. So the loss of that, and then another place around the corner, which was a mom and pop, watering hole, McHale's in 2006, also very traumatic. And I'm like, okay, we've got to start documenting these places, and more importantly, not just documenting them as isn't this pretty, but really understand them, understand their stories, and make the argument for people who are in a position to do something about it, why they should be preserved. Why New York City needs basically laws that are more conducive certainly to legacy businesses.
For sure. And I think with that sense of like nostalgia and interest in history. We were talking a little bit about television earlier. I think television has a great power, doesn't it? You think of Mad Men, we talked about Mrs. Maisel, we mentioned Times Square, it made me think of The Deuce as well, which is another great show. All those like Vinyl, The Get Down, all these kind of like retro shows really actually open people's eyes. Maybe they don't realise they're getting a history lesson. No. You kind of sneak it in, and then it kind of makes people think, well, actually, that's quite interesting.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah, maybe we should save some of these things.
Absolutely, and I love the fact that there is this trend in society that again, corporate America seems to be waking up to it. We see the examples of Pizza Hut, we see the examples of Burger King, which has brought back its a version of its legacy logo, their most recent campaign plays off a lot of nostalgic elements. They have it Your Way campaign updated for today. But then, right, you had mentioned McDonald's, which has sort of been on this self-destructive tear for the past decade. Right, the adult Happy Meal. Even though our beloved characters have like 2 sets of eyes to go with this collaboration that they're doing with the streetwear brand, nevertheless, it's a nice little signal. And I found it very ironic that the Happy Meal box features a red-roofed mansard building, which is, of course, has been there in their corporate board in Chicago. It's like the enemy number 1, that building, demolish, But anyway, I think that's encouraging. And in a few days, or maybe today, they are dropping their Halloween pails, Happy Meal pails, which they haven't done those in a number of years. So I think corporate America is starting to sort of get it more. I mean, because listen, if they go on my account or many other accounts too, I'm hardly the only person writing about this stuff or posting about this stuff. They're like, Jesus, this. Why are we fighting this? Embrace this, And so I think that's very good. And then we're also seeing a trend where, when you see a picture of New York where we just met on the Upper West Side in Columbus Avenue in 1975. Go this way, and you see the storefronts. It isn't just that it's old tiny and look at the funny sideburns and bell bottoms everybody's watching. It's just the texture of the street. It's so much more appealing with a mix of signage and fonts, and it's just much more appealing to the eye. Over the past 20 years, we've gone away from that. Signage has become very utilitarian, and bland and safe. You don't want to offend anybody's sensibilities. We're a posh neighborhood. We don't want to have anything outrageous or God forbid tacky, neon or funky fonts and typeface. But there's been a push against it. You're seeing a lot more of this sort of come back in neo-neon and new signage. And one of the key players in this space is a company called Noble Signs, where they're based in Brooklyn. 2 young guys who, like me, around the same time began to realize that, hey, New York is losing this texture. We're sign makers. We can do something about it. So they've started a kind of a bespoke kind of boutique business out in Brooklyn where they will create a whole brand identity for a mom and pop business that includes a really smashing sign, that's, you look at it and you're in love. A great example of that is what they did for Ace's Pizza in Williamsburg. I mean, from the signage to the interior, they even created a little mascot, little Ace character. I mean, it's fabulous.
I know it very well. Very very retro, very cool looking place.
Absolutely. And so it's nice to see that. And it's not. And again, I think there's some of the pushback on this might be, well, we're just fetishizing a certain era or a certain style. Like I don't think so, as much as reacting against how bland and banal and boring our world has become. It doesn't necessarily have to ape the design language of 1970. Do something new, but make it interesting, visually stimulating, fun, exciting. That speaks to your soul,
exactly.
Right?
And I feel like there's a kind of, you can sense that optimism, especially that age in America in the 60s, like the 60s in America. There's lots of optimism. You can kind of sense that in the design and the architecture and.
That's right. Even while America was beginning to go through all these convulsions, looking around you, it was a very happy, optimistic place, at least in the storefront design. But I mean, not always the case in in society. But certainly not. But yes, but in other ways, absolutely. And I think this counter trend toward creating more lively streetscapes. I think it's very, very welcoming. I couldn't be happier that that's happening. And if I can, in any way, have either contributed to that or can facilitate it, then I couldn't be happier.
Exactly. And do your viewers on ABC News and the website, people on the website get in touch and do you think the stories resonate with them?
They do. I mean, these sorts of stories perform well for ABC, but I would say where it has the greatest impact is on my own social platforms, on my own Instagram. Like I tell you, man, I mean, I had a post I did on the occasion of the 82nd birthday of Dairy Queen, where I posted a collection of Dairy Queens that I've shot around the country, including my favorite one, a picture of a Dairy Queen in Butler, Pennsylvania on a snowy February day.
Yeah.
It's just such a good picture, and I love it. And so this thing is pushing 70,000 likes.
Yeah.
I probably got 10,000 followers just from that one post, but it really, really resonated.
Yeah.
So I would say, it's, there's no boundaries to the interest that I get for this stuff. And one of the things that's very encouraging is when I look at my analytics, that the bulk of my readers are like basically in the demographic of 18 to 34, 40 in that general range. So they're younger people who really appreciate that stuff. And that gives me a lot of hope that it's not just an old fogey like me, that gets this. That it's people of all ages who think this is significant and who believe in it enough to, interact with me and share my content and get it out there and further amplify it. So
exactly. So people need to check out your Insta. So it's at
Rolando. It's my name,
Pujol.
Rolando Pujol. At this point, I'm sort of married to that. I'm not going to change it to Retrologist or whatever. And I have a Substack as well, which is also my name, which you can find on my Instagram. And the Substack offers in-depth newsletters and additional services. Things like guides to particular cities or subject matter, including that Pizza Hut list that we were talking about. So head on to the Substack.
I'm going to get that and
see where you can plan your wedding.
Yeah, Pizza Hut. Wait, I might have to do that.
Pizza Hut weddings.
I have to do that myself.
There's something here.
ABC 7 New York. You have stories. Stories on there. We're just walking past.
We're walking by the building right here, the wonderful historic headquarters of ABC News, and WABC.
Great logo.
The logo. Yeah, Paul Rand.
Yeah.
1962.
That ABC logo is an absolute classic.
It's an icon. Yeah. I mean, they have only made slight modifications to it here. A couple of years ago, they tweaked the letters a little bit, but generally, it is a perfect logo. Mm-hmm. And the same year that the logo was introduced, the Circle 7 logo that WABC uses was introduced by a graphic designer based in, I believe, San Francisco. It was first rolled out at the ABC station KGO in San Francisco, quickly spread to the other ABC stations and some non-ABC stations as well, the Circle 7, or at least non-ABC-owned stations. And you do not have to improve on that logo. You can vary the width and you can play with little things that designers see. But for the public, it's been the same logo for just celebrated its 60th anniversary. That's an incredible run.
It's incredible.
So,
it's incredible. I have to ask you one final question, Rolando. Yes. Is it anything like Anchorman in your?
No, not at all. Not at all.
In your
it's funny you should say that. You should say that because Eyewitness News, the concept was created by a gentleman named Al Primo, who just died a couple of weeks ago. He was 87 years old, and he created the concept down in Philadelphia, although the roots of it were even in Pittsburgh, where he used to work, and elsewhere. Yeah. But the concept basically, at its heart, is that, TV news in the 60s was a dreadful, dull affair. It was a stentorian-voiced, white-haired man with, horn-rimmed glasses reading AP copy. Very few visuals. Graphical elements, and Primo said, no. News is about people first. Yeah. We're going to hire reporters. He was even turning people who weren't reporters in the KYW newsroom down in Philly, but who were, were in the newsroom, who were intelligent, and said, I'm going to make you a reporter. I'm going to give you a mic. You're going out. You're going to cover the story. Yeah. And he created beat systems, and so he professionalized local news by making sure that we were doing original local reporting. And the eyewitness concept comes from not just like reading wire copy or making some phone calls, but going to the scene, getting the interview, sticking that Circle 7 microphone right into the camera view there, and bringing the news to the people, then bringing that story back to the anchors at the station, who serve as eyewitnesses, the reporters serving as eyewitnesses, and then creating the team concept. Reporters, anchors, everybody working together, people that like each other. God forbid, people that like each other. So it becomes a family, and that was very appealing to viewers. And Eyewitness News has done some really extraordinary journalism over the year. One of the most notable things that Primo executive produced, but the Geraldo Rivera got its start here at Channel 7, right here in this on this block, was an investigation into a center for people with disabilities on Staten Island called Willowbrook. He got remarkable footage and did extraordinary reporting, for which, from where we're standing, you can see the Emmy Award for that investigation.
The Emmy is right there.
Right
on
there.
the
That's
shelf.
Rollando's Emmy that we've hung on to. I'm sure he has his own copy. And
hopefully that's not the closest I'll ever get to an Emmy.
Oh, I think we can. Well, once we do our piece on the Pizza Hut wedding.
Oh, I think we have a
Peabody, shot for the EGOT.
I think
we're going all the way with this.
I think so. We'll make that documentary. I think we could have an Academy Award for Best Documentary.
I think so, and it all began here, and you heard it here first.
Right, let's wrap it up. I'll walk you back to Regis. You said let's meet at the Regis Film Inn. Right, let's take a look at that, and then we'll say our
become something of a.
We'll say goodbye. So this is the entrance to WABC 7,
and this is where the Regis Film Inn would come in here every morning to record a show. It began as the morning show in 1983. Regis was, of course, well known at the time, but he had not yet had this transcendent moment of explosive fame.
Yeah.
This station produced that show. Regis just sort of hit. It just happened for him here, and it happened for WABC here with this show. I mean, there had been morning shows here going back years that had never quite taken off. This took off. It eventually became live with Regis and Kathy Lee for a big chunk of that run.
That was a very popular show in America,
very popular show, and it still is. And now it's Ryan Seacrest and Kelly Ripa, and it's still I believe it's the #1 syndicated talk show. I think it is, and it's a very, very successful show, and it is still produced out of this very building where it has been made all these years. So
have a look for Ryan Seacrest on the way out.
Yeah, please. He might be. How are you? So, in fact, that was Jim Dolan, who was also a legendary reporter here at Channel 7 for decades. It's, for me, who grew up in New York, watching this station from childhood, to work here, to work with these giants, and to play a role working on the digital team and working on strategy in helping this place evolve for the 21st century. I mean, it's a dream job. If I could go back to talk to my 4-year-old self, the child of Cuban immigrants living in suburban New York in a small apartment, I'd blow the kid's mind. Yeah. Really? I'm going to work there one day?
Exactly.
So it's a very, very special place and a great iconic institution to be associated with.
Well, Rolando, we'll let you go back and start. Thank you so much for talking today.
My
I hope
pleasure.
you enjoyed it.
It was so much fun.
Amazing.
Anytime. And see you at the Pizza Hut wedding.
Yeah, Pizza Hut wedding. Perfect. Thanks, Rolando.
Yeah, you bet.
That episode of Park Date. There's lots more where that came from, and there'll be more in the future as well. If you enjoyed it, please leave a review, good or bad, make them funny. I'll be reading out the best ones, and there'll be a prize for the one that makes me laugh the most. Name check some trees in your reviews and leave them wherever you get your podcast from. Check out our website, parkdate.co.uk, and if you see me walking around in the park, come and say hello. I think that was the sound of someone sneezing. Yes, thank you. Bye-bye. On the next episode of Park Date, join me and Dame Maggie Smith as we take a nude walk on a park date through the Englischer Garten in Munich. It will be a park date that no one around us will ever forget.